Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Jason.
Hello, everyone.
And Stoney.
Hello.
How's it going?
Oh, we're doing good.
Making it all right?
Yeah, it's
Surprisingly, the country is still operating and functioning, and
No way.
After you've
And
kind of
potentially saving money, maybe.
yeah, it's amazing listening to all the people that are screaming and hollering right now. It's I don't know how you just continue to just accept what was going on and not want to do something about that.
I think it's how do you say this? I think for me, I've been really busy with work and not really paying attention to like the bigger picture very often. But recently, as of this past week, I've heard squeaky wheels make a lot of noise, if you know what I mean, and saying some key phrases and some rather sharp statements about the current president, and I was like, oh, I remember this feeling of like, and so.
Oh yeah, anytime you,
I feel like we're in that point now where they're comfortable enough now where they can say what they want to say.
Yeah, anytime you upset the apple cart, people get upset. I mean, that's just people have gotten used to a certain way of doing things, and
and it almost feels like the cancel culture has gotten canceled.
Yeah. I think people got fed up with basically what was going on the last 4 years with, the trans issue and allowing, boys and girls locker rooms because he identified as a woman. And,
I meant way past that. I meant like if I didn't like something, we're just going to cancel it.
Yeah,
if you said something, it doesn't even have to be a specific issue.
Right.
It just seems like bam.
Yeah. I mean, no, I agree. I think, well, it's like anything. Everything is just, there's a pendulum. Mm-hmm. It swings a certain way, and then all of a sudden, and I said this. I said when the starts rolling back, it's
well,
part
of the problem is this is the Gen X rule now. Okay, the Gen X is the ones who drank from the garden hoses. They were out until dark. The safety system was, you stuck the little the paper clip in the electric socket, and your dad didn't stop you. Once you electrocuted yourself, he asked you if you were, hey, dumbass, you going to do that again?
Right.
And so these are the people that are kind of running the country right now from that X-Gen generation.
Yeah.
The last true tough generation there was that was built on toughness, because it was the Vietnam veterans and the World War II veterans and the Korean War veterans that raised these kids.
Yeah.
So they got a little toughness with them. And this is what's running the country now.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And there's a lot of things that'll be forthcoming. There's a lot has happened in the last 4 weeks. I expect a lot more over the following 4 weeks.
Yes.
And even probably there's going to be a lot of surprises. So, but
well, we know by the time everybody hears this episode, the Jeffrey Epstein list will be out.
Yep.
I'm kind of interested to see, what happens with that.
Yep.
Because there'll be some people screaming and hollering about that too.
Oh yeah, they will be, because there's a lot of people that don't want those. They don't want those names to come out.
Well, they felt safe with the Biden crime family holding that list. Not letting it out because a lot of them are on that list.
Well,
it's coming.
I think the way this has worked is, I think probably there are certain elements within the federal government that held this information over certain people to get what they wanted out of them, whether they were influencers or had lots of money. And
well, one of the thought processes on this was that Jeffrey Epstein was a CIA asset.
Right.
And he was being used to blackmail people to support the liberal Democrats.
Right. Because they were putting money where certain interests wanted money to go. Mm-hmm. So,
and that's what's kind of so funny, like with the P. Diddy stuff coming out right now. His attorney completely walked away the other day. Just completely walked away. Now, this is a defense attorney that makes millions and millions of dollars defending people who sometimes have done things wrong and stuff like. Why would he walk away? Do you know what the supposed insiders are saying? Cannibalism.
Well,
so if that's true, can you imagine his list coming out?
Well, I've like nothing surprises me of some of the filth over there in Hollywood, and considering that California itself puts out 60% of the world's porn, I saw that was shocking. Somehow that state has allowed an element to fester and to grow, and unfortunately, it's bred a lot of issues that I think are quite disgusting to most people. But one of those, because I've read some articles that, yes, that child sacrifice is actually real, and it does happen. So of course, nobody's going to ever cover that. That's always going to be on the fringe. But what we have found out, things that people were on the fringe talking about, there's a lot of truth there.
Well, right now, conspiracy theorists are up 47-0.
Right.
So, last year about this time it was 32-0.
Yeah.
Now it's 47-0.
We're in strange territory right now. So we'll see what happens. But
strange and interesting times.
I think we are. I think today we were talking about an interesting topic. We were kind of talking about this, and we kind of thought, this would be a good topic to talk about. But what are some of the greatest inventions generationally that we all can look back on and go, wow, how that changed civilization?
Well,
for the most part.
Two ways you could go about this: generationally, what you grew up with, or generationally, what you invented. And I kind of went about it generationally, what you grew up with.
Right.
What happened during your time growing up.
Right.
So you may have some other stuff, and we just kind of make sure that when we're talking about it, our listeners understand that there was two ways we could have done it.
Right.
So,
well, as I said,
I did it basically, the greatest generation born from 1901 to 1927, inventions during their lifetime. Number one, air conditioning, 1902.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Huge.
Yes. Neon lights, 1910. Stainless steel was invented in 1913. And this one was kind of interesting. In 1913, the crossword puzzle was invented.
I never would have thought about that.
Wow.
I knew when I was I was doing research on this, there's going to be so many things that we just take for granted.
Yes.
That you don't even think about where they came from.
Well, here's one right here. The zipper, 1913.
Yep.
Before, it was the button-up.
It was a button-up type.
Radio broadcasting.
Button fly.
Button fly, that's right. What is it, 501s or 505s?
They still do.
They still make them.
Yeah.
Insulin.
Yep.
And here's an interesting one. Traffic signals was invented in 1923.
There you go.
Television, 27. Now here's one I thought was kind of interesting. Bubble gum.
Yeah.
1928. Now, some of these are goofy and some of these are life-changing, but we all grew up with bubble gum. It was like you just kind of expected it was always there.
Yeah.
And,
ones.
Nylon, radar, helicopter, color photography. Ooh, here's one. In 1943, the slinky was invented.
Slinky.
Whoever played with a slinky?
Oh, yeah.
I love the slinky.
Right?
Talk about addicting, though.
What? Going down, when you can make it go down the stairs?
I just play it in my hands. It's something that's like mesmerizing to me. I don't know what it is, but...
Well, what do they call them now? Fidget... What do they call the little...
Fidget toys?
Fidget toy? Was that the original fidget toy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
besides a stick.
I did basically. I saw some articles and some pretty interesting stuff here because there's so much.
Oh yeah.
Of what's been invented, but I've got a list of just 10 items here that I thought were pretty interesting here. The nuclear reactor. Enrico Fermi. We've heard that name before.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yes, we
He
have.
developed the first reactor on December 2nd, 1942. He created the world's first controlled nuclear chain reaction. That's number 10. Number 9, genetic modification.
Wow.
Biochemists Herbert Boyer and Stanley Cohen introduced in 1972 when they successfully altered DNA. That's big. Now, one that we've heard a lot about in the news lately, vaccinations.
Okay.
The original conception of vaccination started with a guy by the name of Edward Jenner in 1796. It's vaccinations have saved approximately 3 million lives a year, which is
But how many has it taken?
Well, I don't know how many it's taken, but I would venture to say that people that were dying of polio and smallpox. You think of all the diseases yellow fever. You think of all the diseases that at one time killed people on a regular basis. Malaria, especially here in South Louisiana. I mean, I can go to some old graveyards, and there's a monument to the 1875 yellow fever outbreak,
Right.
where hundreds of people died because of no vaccinations or no means of curing that unless you were just strong enough to survive it.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I do believe some vaccinations properly tested and I think are good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I took I don't want to say I took a different approach on this, but like I focused on solely things that came out like in my lifetime.
No, that's fine.
Like inventions that I think released whenever I was like in my late kid, early teenage years.
Yes.
That, like I felt like impacted me.
We're going to talk about all kind of things that I mean. I even want to talk about what are some future inventions that are like I think will come about, which I think would be interesting. Harnessing microwaves.
Yeah.
You know, computers.
Yep.
Bill Gates, when he introduced Windows software.
Yeah. That's wild. When would
it opened up people to have computers at home?
Oh, yeah.
Charles, actually, believe it or not, they attribute that to Charles Babbage. He debuted his mechanical calculating machine in 1833.
Mechanical calculating machine.
And he refined that machine till 1870. His death in 1870.
Well, the Microsoft guy has not really invented anything. He's stolen basically everything from somebody else, claimed it for himself, and then
that's to be debated.
Yeah,
I think that Bill Gates has some things that he did right, but I think more than anything else, Steve Jobs is the one who used to steal things and
absolutely. Absolutely, Steve Jobs is.
Yeah, but I mean, no one can deny that once Windows came out, it completely revolutionized how we approach computers.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's just what it is. But so Ian, what do you? I mean, some of the things that you.
So again, I kind of took this. I have some more broad things that I think that really did change, but I have some more personal things as well that I kind of read down. Specifically for myself, one that I think is personal that I think impacted history more than I think people realize or want to give it credit for is the PlayStation 2.
Yes.
I think it was 2001, I think the PlayStation 2 released. And still, as of today, that is the highest selling gaming console in history. Because it also, they sold models of that, new models, for 10 years, which is like, and so like and that revolutionized so much of like the way how like gaming stuff used to be,
right,
and how it was played and how it was understood, to like now we have 3D things, and it was just this new, for me, I remember it was just that, I mean, it was something that I coveted that I thought I could never have.
Right.
So whenever I did eventually get one for like a Christmas or whatever, I was like, oh, this is
That
future.
was invented in 94, though. 1994.
Probably,
Yeah.
but again, it released publicly released, or maybe it just released in North America. I'm not sure.
A lot of
in
things
2001
in that, and that would be kind of like the baby boomers era. Bluetooth, PlayStation.
Oh yeah, I was saying, yeah.
Google was.
Those are all
98,
things that I was going to.
But it's kind of a nice little error of time there. It was like this 10-year period where all of this kind of neat stuff kind of came out.
As I've talked about before, I think that once we start dipping our toes into 2008 and beyond, and we really start to see like the invention of smartphones and like, and what I call, and this is probably something I could talk for too long about, is like the ubiquity of technology, how like it goes from being broad and like everyone has like a niche piece of technology that like either fits their personality right or fits a certain job or task right, to where all of the technology becomes homogenized and it all looks the same, and it's all a rectangular black box that, you know, is a smartphone. It's like there's like a moment where it's like innovation, I feel like, narrows down, but like there's this moment in the early 2000s, like, you know, Stoney just briefly touched on things in my lifetime, like flash drives were like a big deal. Like you could have you could hold memory in your pocket, like as opposed to having floppy disks or CDs. Or
that was 1999, so it's kind of in that
saying.
little era there.
Again, this is I was raised in the late 90s, so it's all going to be things that are referenced to that.
But you see, that's
Bluetooth was a thing that released in that time frame that like we use now and pretend like it's just like something that's so normal, but like that was not a thing that.
But see that you talk about the PlayStation, that harkens back memories of, I remember back further.
Yeah.
When the Atari 6400 or whatever, 2600, whatever the number was at the time, I remember as a young kid going to the electronic shop and the stores would pack when these Ataris. And if you remember, at the same time, Intellivision also came out about the same time. That was kind of the start of the home video game kind of era, kind of really kicked off. Now, eventually,
what happened to Atari?
That's what he said. He said the Atari.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. The Atari and television.
Because that was the 70s.
Yeah.
Well, not the 70s. It came out in the early 80s. As far as, because I remember when it was released, and it hit, because I remember in the early 80s going and dealing with this, because prior to that,
I think in certain countries it released in the late 70s, but I think around here it probably was the 80s.
Yeah.
So.
In 1967, the Magnavox Odyssey was the first one that came out to the home stuff.
Right.
So,
but that's what I'm saying, is like we have like all these inventions, and then like throughout history, like we have so many newer consoles that I think are nice, and they have a lot of horsepower and all that stuff, but like there's this weird middle ground where like we hit this peak, and I think that like there's a couple other handheld consoles that I think sold near the same amount as the PlayStation 2. But it's like it's crazy to think how many were sold across the world, and it was such like for me it changed so much.
Well, I think the technology had got to a point where when PlayStation 2 came out, now you really start to see gaming kind of jump to the next level with quality and what you saw on the screen. Because prior to that, it was all linear stuff. I mean, we all remember our favorites, Missile Command, Asteroid, Dig Dug. Everybody went to the arcade.
Atari was invented in 72 and released in 77.
Was 77?
77. Okay, now, it may have been till the 80s before it really kind of started taking off. But I can remember playing it in the 70s, and I had to pull it up because I have a memory problem now. But
I just remember that was such a big deal at the time.
Huge.
Now,
it was simple, because all it was tennis, and then
well,
other ones kind of
this was
came.
I remember we had the little
Yep.
joysticks
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I just remember how that changed what you did at home, because prior to that, there was nothing really home entertainment.
Right.
Your entertainment was outside.
Right.
That's where you went. So that's where you start to see the gradual abandonment of entertainment outside and
Right.
riding your bikes
Yeah.
and all these other things. And now you gradually, by the time you get to PlayStation
Yeah.
2, you see most people are no longer really doing that outside.
Right.
They're all inside in front of the television set.
Right.
So when was the first email sent?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
1971,
Wow.
How much of that's changed thus?
right?
Emails. That's
Oh man, that is for me. There are certain old technologies that I understand we still use for good reason, like fax.
yes.
Like I know there's like things like that, like that are so antiquated, but I know they have benefits, and I feel like no one wants to say it, but I feel like email is one of those things. I understand the benefit of it. I understand, like, I'm not saying I have a better alternative solution. I'm just saying, like, when you realize how old and unsecure email is, you're like, why are we still doing this?
Well, you see, that's interesting you said that, because the home computer and Microsoft and the computer industry was actually one of the reasons that it got promoted, because it was supposed to save trees. Instead of printing something, you were going to hand somebody a disk
Right.
or something, or send them an email, and we weren't going to have to print so much paper, and we
Right.
were going to save trees. What did the computer do? And Microsoft, they helped us be able to generate lists and charts and graphs and everything else so well. We've tripled the amount of paper that we're using.
What all computers really do is able to compile data.
Right.
That's what
Right.
the advantage is of a computer. Whereas before, how you had to compile data was very laborious, and as you well know now, possibly touching on a future topic, that now if quantum now we're talking about on levels of getting into the science fiction type.
We're talking to a point where, like, now we may the idea. We start tiptoeing into the idea of, like, now we know all possible outcomes now before they happen potentially. It's like, so it's
to me that's going to be an interesting episode to talk about, where and we'll kind of maybe touch on this a little bit toward the end of the episode about what future inventions that are coming that are really close, that you can realistically see in the next 50 years. That are going to be very transformative to our society. So, but in the meantime, I mean, we there's a lot of stuff that we still utilize quite.
I remember when the first iPod released.
Yeah,
and that was such a big deal as well, for, like, being able to have a large archive of music on, like, a handheld device that was, like, simple and clean, and it felt satisfying to use. Like, that's another one of those things that I had on my list of, like, inventions of, like, I remember the rapid change of like how I went from this big thing to being a little bit smaller, and then it came in different colors, and then they had different smaller versions and variants of it. That, like, it's that kind of stuff that, like, the innovative idea of it, or just the kind of fun nature of technology that I don't feel like is there anymore.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, your cell phone, the memory and processing can use 34 billion bits, where the computer that sent man to the moon used 1 million. So basically, your cell phone has 7 million times more processing power and memory than the computer that was in huge warehouses, multi-floors.
Exactly.
I mean, how far have we really come with this thing?
Everything has gotten smaller and smaller and more compact. I mean, we've all heard in the computer world about Moore's Law. The computer, the transistors just getting, trying to get smaller and smaller. And I think eventually they're going to, I think Moore's law is going to eventually. I think they're going to have to. Something else is going to have to take the place.
Funny
of
you
that.
said that. The transistor was invented in 1947.
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
47.
And I remember getting the first transistor radio when I was a kid, not the first one, the first one I got,
Right.
which was interesting because you could put it under the pillow and actually listen to the radio at night.
To me,
Instead of having this big box that,
I think about the one thing that really transformed how the world operates. Think of the one invention. I'm just curious.
Is there one?
Well,
I think transistor would be a good one.
Transistor's one, but I'm going back further because all these technologies are built upon other inventions that happen to allow us to get to that point.
AC electricity would have to be it.
I would venture to say even before that.
What you got?
I know y'all know it. The printing press.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, well, a little bit.
Sure.
Think about
printing. Yeah.
You had to compile books.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Think about how books were compiled.
Well, think about
prior
how
to
books
that,
were used
laboriously.
to control people. Okay, the printing press actually allowed the Bible and other books to go to the common person where the church and governments were trying to stifle information, and it was all done by hand. You had scribes that copied this
it was laborious. I mean, be honest. I mean, the amount of work that went into transcribe a Bible was more valuable than gold.
Right.
That's why they were, a lot of people get all hung up on that. But the reality is, you have no other means of reproducing books other than the handwritten.
Right.
So, for a lot of times, Bibles were chained to a church because they were so valuable, people would try to steal them.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
But they also didn't want that knowledge out there.
The printing press was, I don't know about that, but I mean, that's neither here nor there. But I'm just saying the idea that now we can mass produce material, compile material in one book, where now people can learn about certain things, which I think then give rise to some of these other things that come along later on. Because the printing press was 1540. Mm-hmm. So it lays the groundwork for us now to start learning on a different level than we did before. So I think that was a pretty interesting.
I think in that same vein, I feel like it's a couple hundred years after all that, but but steam powered stuff. If we're starting talking about things that change stuff of being able to transport stuff.
The internal combustion engine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
1807. By a guy by the name of Francois Isaac de Ravaz. It was based on an earlier design in 1680 by Christian Huygens, if I'm pronouncing his name right. So, yeah, that is actually number 4 on my list. It's the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you one that y'all probably don't even think about here that's 3 on this list. The fractional distillation of crude oil.
Oh, gosh.
Think about that.
You're right.
Think about that. I mean, how that transformed everything.
Well, how about this? When was the first electric car invented?
We've talked about this before. I think.
Yes, we have.
It's a long time ago, and it got
1884.
Got shafted.
Yeah.
Think about that. What if we'd have went that route back then? Where do you think we'd be now with an electric car?
I want to bookmark that because I saw something on future tech that I think ties into that, which would be fun. But yeah, I agree. If we would have gone a different, just like we talked about, if we would have gone, if Tesla would have been more business savvy, and he would have pushed his version of electricity versus what Edison and some of the others were doing, how that may have changed.
Well, Edison was another one that stole other people's ideas and named them for himself.
Right.
And it's just kind of sad, but that's how he came to power, stealing other people's stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that I've got are kind of like honorable mentions to me. and Stoney, you mentioned a few of them, so I'm going to try to mention one that you didn't, was gas-powered tractors.
Okay.
Changed farming. It revolutionized agriculture. Whereas before it was very, very labor intensive, now you can go out there with a tractor.
Yeah.
You think about what you think of big farms now that have those gigantic tractors that are doing all the work that used to have to be done by people.
Right.
I'm going to think of another one here that's very common that we don't think much about.
What's that?
Concrete.
Ah, you're right.
Concrete has been around for
it has,
thousands of years, though.
But not on the mass scale that we utilize it now.
Tell that to the Romans,
well,
and tell that to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
I think
know about that. They did use a version of it.
It's a specific mixture.
That's better than ours today.
It's a specific mixture of concrete you're talking about,
right?
That is able to. That I think it was.
Reinforced concrete.
Right, that helped
there's roads that the Romans built today that look better than some of the roads here made out of concrete in South Louisiana.
Well, they were building and during that time with a different
mindset
in mind, because it wasn't, people were not hiring a company to go and build stuff. Because I mean, who built all the roads were Roman legions, basically, because that's what they did during their times when they were not fighting. So, I mean, you've got basically a permanent labor pool that's, they're doing work at the same time they're fighting. So, here's another one that I found pretty interesting: the magnifying glass.
Interesting.
It was actually invented by the Franciscan friar Francis Bacon, who taught at Oxford.
I thought he invented bacon.
No. Yeah, no. There's a lot of actually legends around Francis Bacon.
Yes, there is.
He was invented that in 1268. So another one that I thought was interesting: X-rays.
Oh gosh.
1895.
1890. Get out. Wow.
Yeah, by a German engineer and physicist. Inadvertently discovered it.
Of course. It's always the stuff that inadvertently discovered.
It was accident.
Yeah.
I got another one that I thought was interesting. The pocket calculator. Think about what that did for students, education, and work.
Yeah.
That was really kind of the early computer.
That was early computers. At one time, they were huge.
They were huge, and they did graphs, and they did you could put formulas, and it did so much. And
oh yeah, I remember those big calculators at the time.
Oh, remember they had to and then bring the arm down and bring the arm down, and what the heck?
I'll tell you another one that we utilize every single day. GPS.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let's think of traveling. I mean, I remember before GPS.
Oh,
it was pull a map out.
I remember before GPS.
And try to figure it out.
Well, then on top of that, Google Maps.
Yeah.
Because Google Maps was really the first one. Now you got Waze, which I love. But look what GPS did for that now, just traveling.
Yeah, we are...
I remember the days of MapQuest where you had to you print out 16 pages of directions. Yes. Oh, gosh, it was awful.
Right.
Yeah.
Even during that time, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this.
How about this one? The Sony Walkman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1979.
I remember the Walkman. Man, there was a lot of stuff coming out in that mid to late 70s that, I think back on that time, I was young during those years. So I really wasn't utilizing that stuff. But I mean, I started benefiting from that stuff in the mid 80s. I just gotta remember all that. I mean, it's unbelievable. Some of these things, and as I said, there's so many things that you didn't even think about. When I was kind of going through this list, I was like, I didn't even think about that because it becomes so ordinary. You you don't even think about it. Yeah, I'm gonna think of another one. Right now, it comes to my mind. We utilize it every single day.
Oh, I got one for you. Go ahead. Throw yours out. And then I got another one.
The toilet.
I was going to say sanitation and clean water.
The toilet.
Sanitation, because they used to just throw it out the window into the street.
That's right.
Ha!
Running water.
Yes.
you do your business in a bucket. Can you imagine the stench between what a medieval town probably smelled like, with horses dropping their mess on the street, mixing that with human waste, and how eventually somebody got to a point, it's like, we got to do something different here because people are getting sick. These things, diseases are running rampant. Many people say that what happened with the fall of Rome and what we attribute the Dark Ages to, and sort of like how people live, that there were sanitary features built into these ancient Roman communities. And eventually, as the Roman Empire fell apart and the barbarians were running rampant throughout the empire, we kind of reverted back to this primitive type of life that people had really crawled themselves out of.
Right.
And we kind of went back to it. So it's I can only imagine how that smelt. Just to me, it just blows my mind of just basic sanitation practices, how that changed our lives.
Yeah. I was going the same. That's awesome. That's the second time we did that in another episode. Who you'd want to have dinner with?
Yes,
we chose who first?
Jesus Christ,
and we did it again. That's awesome.
Yeah, I thought. Awesome. I mean, I just something brought my. I don't know why I thought about the toilet.
Yes,
just
I did too.
But I think when I was doing some research, I popped an article and like the toilet. It's like, you're right.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yep.
Prior to that, it was that or going outside in an house. I mean, I remember my.
But that still was a step up from throwing it out the window. Yeah. Or the rich people had a little toilet on the end of the wall, and you just took a shat kind of straight down there, and it landed in the streets. But
probably their bowel movements were probably a lot more healthier than what we put in our body nowadays. But it was all wild. It's all natural food back then.
Yeah, but can you imagine walking down the street and getting hit in the back of the head with a big old turd or something?
I do think that we've already mentioned it earlier, but I do think that air conditioning has been something that when I look back at history, I'm like, man,
Well, they built. I mean, to accomplish. I mean, if you look at the old houses, how they were built to allow breeze to go through.
Well, I grew up with an attic fan.
Yeah,
and I loved it because what you did, you had that attic fan going, and then you cracked your windows like 1 inch to 2, and that was like its own air conditioning system because it could cool a house off, especially at night.
Yeah.
But man, I can remember that just
for
years. I couldn't sleep with air conditioning. I wanted that attic fan. You got used to it. Kind of like when I lived right next to the railroad tracks. You kind of got used. You could feel that train and feel that horn, hear that horn going. You got what you get used to is interesting.
Yeah.
Now I'm used to air conditioning.
I've heard the same thing about people that live near like metropolitan areas and like hearing cars and hearing traffic, kind of like even late at night. I had a friend who came from one of those areas and stayed here, and I'm in a more suburban area, or I'm outside of like the main downtown city area, so like it is quiet, and there's a pretty good amount of land around.
You live in the country.
No, there are people who live in the country who live off the beaten path. I try to because there's certain people that are like. When I say that, they think I live on a dirt road, 3 miles off the main highway.
Okay,
like,
just got paved like 6 weeks ago.
No,
it was a dirt road.
No, it did not. No, it did not. Don't put me in that box. But what I'm saying is, like, again, at night specifically, especially like between the hours of like midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever, it gets really quiet out here.
And dark.
And so that's what they were. This person in particular came, and we had stepped outside for a minute, pretty late at night, and he was like, I don't know if I can't do this. It's too quiet. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I sleep with like, of like
You're
the
right.
interstate, and I was like, oh, there's no way. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
You're right. What you get used to and what you feel comforted.
Well,
in,
you
know?
said that. I mean, look at the people who live in Chicago and New
Oh, yeah.
York with the trams
Yeah.
right there. You build, they build it between the buildings or the buildings around the
Right.
trams, and it's just a constant shaking and rattling and noise, and it's
that's
just
what I'm saying,
fantastic.
Where you live. If you
Oh,
live in
yeah.
a more urban environment, or
Yeah.
do you live in a more rural environment? I'm going to tell you what, sometimes even living in a rural environment can be loud.
Oh,
I've been
yeah.
in some environment to hearing the wildlife come alive at
you're
night.
right. You're right.
Can be quite
And that's
quite
what,
vibrant.
and that's what I mean. It's like we're in this weird middle space where like you can be out in the country and you'll hear,
You can hear
you'll hear the
Hey,
wildlife.
when I was
wildlife.
very young, we grew up next to the zoo.
Yeah.
And you could hear
Oh,
the
gosh.
lions, you could hear the
That's wild.
gorillas, you could hear the animals, and you're going, uh-oh.
Oh yeah.
We had a weird one-off site where we have like a little bridge that goes over like this like little stream or something like that. And then late one night, and this never happens, but as I'm driving, I saw a little deer run across the road. And I was like, you never see him out.
Jason
out
and I
here.
were coming to the studio 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a nice
Fox.
big fox ran right.
Wow.
Yeah, just right
Interesting.
in there.
Yeah.
How about-
It's just it's like I said, it's just enough where you're like where you'll get those glimpses like that, but it's not a regular occurrence.
Well, I'm gonna mention.
interesting.
I'm gonna mention an invention
Yeah.
that my
Okay.
girlfriend and I were having a discussion about,
Uh,
and she goes, "What about the tampon?
Yeah.
How
Well,
that-
I think
how about
that's also,
toilet paper?
How that changed?"
I think it's a blessing and a curse from
Yeah,
what a lot of people say.
yeah. So it's a shout out to you,
yeah,
babe.
yeah.
That
But
she
you're right, though.
mentioned- You think from female
Yeah, right.
hygiene,
Yeah.
how that changed? You can imagine what did ladies do?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
For centuries
You're
before
right.
that. I mean, so
Wow.
yeah.
I've got another one to throw at y'all.
What you got?
We're all using it right now.
Microphones?
Glasses.
How about glasses? How about
Right.
just glasses? What did people do?
You just didn't
Just
see.
didn't see.
Yeah.
Or they use some sort of,
Magnifying glass or something.
right, a magnifying
Well, the
glass.
monocle. What's the little
Yeah.
Monopoly
Right.
guy with the monocle?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So it's a lot of people. I mean, now some things that are a little bit more modern. I'm thinking about the birth control pill,
Mm-hmm.
how that changed
Yeah.
human sexuality
Right.
in our
Mhm.
culture.
The medicine in general is grown so much.
Medicines in general, and aspirin.
Well, I did not know this. I don't want to enter. When was the eyeglass invented? The
Oh,
13th century.
a long
I
time ago.
figured
That's
it would,
a long. I did not realize it was
that.
that far away. I thought it would have been a little closer than that. That's interesting, right there.
Yeah, I think it's looked different throughout history. I mean,
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
how about this one? When was the original night vision invented?
I don't know.
Who invented it?
don't know.
Pirates.
Interesting.
Because the eye patch for pirates was not because they were missing an eye.
Right.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
No.
So what happened was as the pirates and the ships and they were taking over a ship, if you were on the top of the ship during the day, you had the full sun in your eye. So, and you went down into the hull of another ship to fight, you were blind.
Right.
So what you did was they actually popped the eye patch to the other eye, and this eye could see in the dark and this eye could see in the light.
Gotcha.
And
Wow.
so that's how
That's
that's
interesting.
the kind of the original night vision was invented by the pirates. Just
That's
to throw that one
interesting.
out.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I would have never thought about that.
Well, people are very smart.
Oh yeah,
And when
people,
you
the necessity.
yes,
Especially when it comes to crime.
necessity breeds invention.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just does. I think that's generally where we've made our greatest jumps. It's when people are pressed up against a wall and they're looking for something. That's when these
Right.
inventions occur. A lot of them, not all of them, but a good bit of them.
well, look how much war has.
Oh, well, war is
Push.
a great
Oh, yeah,
innovator
yes.
because we're always looking for better ways to kill people.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the only thing we're really good at.
We're really good at.
It seems like
Yeah,
sometimes. It's
sometimes we seem like we love killing our own, but
Mhm.
war. As I said, these kind of events,
Mm-hmm.
are, I don't know. I mean, what's the proper term? As I said, necessity is the mother of
Oh, yeah,
invention is the name of the term. So
Yes,
any
it
type
is.
of these situations come up, I do believe something breaks.
Yeah.
I just think that's just how we work. So, lots of interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thing when you
A
look at
lot
what
of-
has been invented and what's going to be invented.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of things that are forthcoming, and I know we want to kind of touch on that a little bit before we close out. But what are some of those things in the future y'all see happening?
Besides the quantum computing stuff, I think just like the access to a better and faster technology in general is becoming such a. I think it's also like the even just in my couple of years in like the early 2000s to see how fast like technology has expanded. I thought that we were at like a pretty cool point now, and I'm looking at like computer specs and computer technology that's so much better than it was even back then. So I feel like that's going to just be more. The price is going to be easier to acquire, like even better technology than I think I had access to when I was younger, which is interesting to think about.
I mean, some of the ones I saw that I'm reading up an article by the BBC Science Focus, and some of the things that and of course everything now is prefaced with AI,
Of course,
but
Well,
AI powered financial, things. The things that financial investors do now.
right.
Think about what an AI powered system can do now. It can basically do all the work for an
Well,
individual.
and that was-
Can basically say, okay, run me what stocks are going to be over 25 or 30 years.
That was what I was talking about with quantum computing. That's like that's the fun aspect and also the scary aspect of it is that you want to talk about expediting general artificial intelligence or I guess it's artificial.
Well, some
general
say
intelligence.
we're already
Well,
there.
no,
I think
we
we
are.
are.
We are not. No, we are 100% not there. But quantum computing will bring us there very quickly. I think we could, again, if what Microsoft and what other companies do have for quantum computing right now, I think it's supposed to be releasing in the next like year or two. I think with that we could be at artificial general intelligence within a handful of years.
Well, it took
So-
whatever this
But
AI that we don't know is already out there. They have developed in less than 2 weeks a 20,000 horsepower AI generated rocket engine.
Mhm.
And it took AI less than 2 weeks to do it.
right.
Well, I
The point I was making with that is that you want to talk about limiting probability in the human experience. I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm not saying that this is what's going to be our future, but you want to talk about having quantum computing and AI and all that kind of stuff of like really narrowing down probability for humans of like within a very low margin of error, you could have an answer. Talk about like financial stuff or even other things like that. Of like you could have within seconds, you can have like an almost guaranteed answer for something that like is without probability.
Well, I found this fascinating here. I got this feed popped up on Facebook. It's called Mechanical Engineering World. This new quantum computer that the Chinese just brought online, or this is a prototype, but it basically performed 2.6 billion years of computation in 4 minutes.
Yep. That's what I'm talking about. is that the second that AI gets a hold of that, is
that's when you marry that together. We're now in the realm of Skynet. Yeah. I mean, we are. I mean, the things we attribute to science fiction.
Yeah.
It's going to become reality.
Right.
So a lot of things that any profession that involves the basically the compilation of data and making projections, I see those jobs basically fading out because they won't need them.
100%. I think we're at this very interesting tipping point where I feel like AI has grown so much in the past couple of years, and I think it's getting better, and I think it will get better. But I think we're reaching this point where like we're gonna hit a plateau, and it's gonna get to a point where like, and I feel like we're getting there quickly, where it's like it is effective at doing what it's supposed to do, but then I think in a handful of years we're gonna blast through the ceiling again, and
Skynet is coming.
So I think it's gonna be
I'm gonna tell you another thing that I think it's within the next 50 years easy is a portable health diagnostic devices, where kind of the whole thing.
Well, they've got smart beds now.
You see people walk into these, in these science fiction, they walk into these tubes, they scan them, they can tell you exactly what's wrong with you.
They've already got smart beds now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to get even smaller.
I think if you have some of the more recent smartwatch variants, they have a lot of different sensors and things on there that like you can have your.
This one does an EKG on it,
right?
Sleep, everything.
Right.
Just the EKG.
But what I'm saying is like they have more modern ones that can also like check blood sugar and things like that, or all that kind of stuff. Where it's like it can oxygen in your blood if you're sleeping
this one
well.
Does this one too?
Right. Yep. It's like that kind of stuff, and it can also send you like. Heart arrhythmia things, whatever. It's like it's crazy the fact that like we've got
this one has a unique feature. It does this every so often. It says, "Hey, dumbass, get up and walk."
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, I think a lot of them do that. But I'm talking about
actually says that.
I know. I believe you. I believe you programmed it to say that to you. That doesn't surprise me.
Here's one that I like. It's pretty interesting here. NASA's X-59 quiet supersonic aircraft is set to take to the skies for the first test flight at Armstrong Flight Research Center later this year. Now, I don't know what the date this was, but obviously this is coming up, or it has.
Right.
The plane is currently being assembled at a hangar at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works facility in Palmdale, California. Its fuselage, wings, and tail have been specifically designed to control airflow around the plane as it flies, with the ultimate aim of preventing a loud sonic boom.
Oh, I've seen this.
From disturbing people on the ground when it breaks the sound barrier.
I've seen this. It's like it's super long.
Yes.
It has like the longest little bitty nose. Just so it cuts through the air like that. I've seen that before.
And here's another one kind of following, which I think this is, to me, interesting. If I'm reading the right one, no, this is not it. I'm thinking of something else. I'm sorry.
I just hope, because it's Lockheed Martin, I just hope it doesn't fall apart in the air.
Yeah, no, Kate, that would be. And talk about another thing we brought up, talking about concrete. I was reading about this. I think y'all would find this interesting. Self-healing living concrete.
Oh, I think I have read a little bit about something like this.
Bacteria growing and mineralizing in the sand hydrogel structure at Colorado University Boulder. Scientists have developed what they call living concrete by using sand, gel, and bacteria. Researchers said this building material has structural load-bearing function, is capable of self-healing, and is more environmentally friendly than concrete, which is the second most consumed material on Earth. Didn't realize that either.
Yeah.
After water. The team from the University of Colorado Boulder believe their work paves the way for future building structures that could heal their own cracks.
That's wild.
Suck up dangerous toxins from the air, and even glow on command.
That's wild. You talk about future stuff. That's interesting.
Now, here's another one. This is the one I was talking about the airplane. And it's where I think you could see how this might kind of fold into aerospace. Chemical engineers from Switzerland's École Polytechnique name have created a prototype device that can produce hydrogen fuel from the water found in air.
Wow.
Inspired by leaves, the device is made from semiconducting materials that harvest energy from sunlight and use it to produce hydrogen gas from water molecules found in the atmosphere. The gas then potentially can be converted to use as liquid fuel. Now you think about that. If somehow that could be perfected, every airplane could basically never have to fill up because they would be fueling up in the air as they're flying.
Now we're talking about Elysium now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just, to me, I found that I found that interesting.
That is cool.
How about this is kind of something we never really think about. What about rust prevention? Like cathodic diodes and things like that. And now you have metal that doesn't rust except for a little film on the outside of it. And if you like, even in South Louisiana, there's a couple of bridges you can drive under and you can see paint in only certain sections of it. And that paint is only over the concrete. And that's only to stop that fine film of rust from staining the concrete.
Right.
What about that, with our ships and our barges now? What stops them from rusting?
Right.
There's these zinc plates that are put on that, and it's a sacrificial plate. Instead of the metal, the steel rusting, the zinc will just disintegrate. And then you have to replace that every so often. What about something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see technology enabling us with a better integration with the natural environment. I can see how these things can eventually merge, especially nanotech and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is quite interesting. Some of it, the next 50 years is going to be if we don't self-implode. I think if we can get past some of this stuff, and I think there's going to be quite a bit of interesting things coming out. I really believe that. I hope we don't have our what do we call it? Our what was it? The
gray filter.
The gray filter. Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, at this point, like that's the thing. It was a potential topic to discuss, but I think it's going to get a little heated. Is recycling stuff.
Yeah,
it's like the fact that recycling has been a scam since the 70s, and it's like that's the kind of thing of like I feel like we're all going to die from plastic before we're able to really enjoy all this new technology.
What do they say now? We consume a credit card's worth of plastic every year.
I think that number is a bit over exaggerated based on some new metrics, but it's not far off. Again,
there are a lot of
microplastics.
There are a lot of microplastics in our bodies, and unfortunately, that's just how we've set up our society.
Right.
I don't know how you get around that. It's just what it is. It's in the food. It's in everything you eat. And as long as you're having to regard going to a grocery store to buy food in any capacity, I don't know how you get around it. I mean,
it's difficult. That's the hard part, is it's permeated everything. But anyways, that's, like I said, that's for another time.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about, is again, it's like at this point, you're talking about this great filter of like, we have all the potential, this technology, but like we have plastic running through our veins right now, and there's no real hope for getting it out. And you're like, oh, okay, well,
that's right. We don't.
What will kill us before we're able to enjoy our technology?
Yeah, hopefully, maybe we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
right.
So.
Man,
what a fun episode.
Yeah,
great episode
discussion.
Yeah, this was fun. Just talking about goofy stuff that you don't think of, like the toilet.
Yeah. Or things you take for granted, because there's a lot of things that I feel like
and there's a lot of things we didn't talk about that are probably just as important.
Well, we try to keep it to an hour. We could have talked another 2 hours on this.
But that's all good. Well, as you guys all know, we have different places where you can get in touch with us and, of course, share your thoughts and feelings. What are some things that happened in your lifetime or beyond that you are interested in or that you think is we potentially missed? Go ahead. And, like I said before, we have those comment sections we have in Spotify, we have in YouTube, we have our email address, getinfinitetogether@gmail.com, where you can send all those kind of requests and conversations starting, stuff like that. But until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Imagine a world without electricity, without the internet, without medicine. Hard to picture, right? But once that was reality. Every invention we talked about today was just a wild idea, a dream someone refused to let go of. And that's the beauty of the human process. If history tells us anything, it's that the next innovation is always just around the corner. Who knows? The next world-changing idea might just come from you. Keep dreaming, keep creating, and we'll catch you in the next episode. You're the best. Peace.